Okay, sorry about that. Just settled down to do the stream. Realized it was a garbage day even with snow. So, whew, it was a bit cold. Mojo, good morning. Coding, Happy New Year. Good morning. Hope you are well. Hope you had a nice holiday period. Authorization. That sounds about right. Doing good, doing good. I'm feeling a productive start to the year. It feels like things are okay. So we can just get two dogs to settle and stop cracking the door and keep putting a cold draft on my back. It'll be fine. Okay. They keep running in and out, and they leave the door wide open, and then there's a cool draft through the door. So I get up, I close it. They run back in because they hear me moving, so they run back in, and they think they're missing something. So yeah, it's a game. Okay. So let's start with things here. So what I'm trying to do right this second is spike enough of actually it's probably best to do this. Liquid Sky as a platform is working right now. The design, whether it's perfect or not, is not my concern, but it is working. We have it up and running. We are able to add planning items. We are able to add requirements, attachments, comments, attachments, asterisk. Local storage does not support the same way. But you know, the things that we started on last year and moved towards are all there and functioning well enough to be usable. However, there's only a very basic permissions piece put in place right this second, and it needs to be much richer. We're using Auth0 as the authentication provider. And Auth0 does support tenants. You can create a new tenant in Auth0, but each tenant has applications, so it's not really built for that. What I'm referring to as a tenant, they're not the same thing. They're different shapes. So to represent tenants in Liquid Sky platform, realistically, it's just it's an identifier. It's a partitioning as such on data of. So the planning table has all the planning items. The planning items table has all the planning items in it, and each item has a tenant identifier, which is attached at the time the user creates the data. Supporting multi-tenancy is a need, right? Being able to, like for example, let's say I want to create a project, an organizational group for the developers.stream stuff that we started yesterday. I don't want that to be part of the Liquid Sky planning. I don't want people to be able to see that. I don't want people to be able to use that. I want a completely separate tenant with completely separate permissions. I don't want to have the same people in both, but I am the same person in both, and I don't want to have to use different emails for each. So I want multi-tenant support. Multi-tenant support comes a need to have different permissions on each tenant, right? Now in this case, I am the administrator of both, therefore I would likely have the same exact permissions in both. I can create things, I can delete things, I can do all sorts of stuff, but I might not want that for someone else that I share with, right? Other people might not have the same administration privileges or the same privileges at all in the Liquid Sky platform as they do in the developers.stream. So when we log into Auth0, we can get permissions and stuff, but then those permissions would be global to Auth0. They would not be per tenant on this side. And there's no way of storing per tenant permissions in Auth0. And quite rightly, because that's not what the platform does. But then we have, where do we put authorization? So we can authenticate with Auth0. That's fine. We can say, yeah, am I allowed to log in? Yes, you are. Am I allowed to do this thing? Am I allowed to see a planning item? Am I allowed to edit a planning item? Am I allowed to add a requirement or add an attachment? Or, you know, these are permissions that need to be understood per tenant for that user. The API gateway is the most natural way to do that. To me, anyway, because it's the entry point of everything, right? Every request comes in through here. From the client side permissions, what we see, what we don't see, etc., that can all be configured through the permissions for certain, but those permissions can be provided down to the client. It's a separate set. But they need to be in the auth token, in the JOT, to be able to be picked up by the rest of the services. So the API gateway is the most natural place to do that. So as a request comes in, we find out who it is, and then we go off and gather the permissions for that person on that tenant, and we attach those permissions and we inject them into a new token and forward that token. That's slow. So we're going to end up with a lot of different technologies in here, a lot of different pieces in here, one of which will be a cache, right? We will need to cache those permissions. We do not want to be hitting the database every single time through. We need a very fast cache to be able to retrieve for a user and tenant the actual permissions applied. How we store those permissions, how we configure those permissions, again, you know, they'll likely be a piece out here. Actually, there'll likely be a piece exactly the same way, right? Security will be a component, or authorize, whatever we call this. There'll be a component, and that database, so the way I'm considering this in the longer term, is it's over here. Oh no, we're getting too complicated. Security would then have a its own piece here, right? So there would be probably a security store here somewhere that would be written to through Kafka. So when we change the permissions, those permissions are filtered through just the same way, and they are stored in there and applied. When they're applied, it will invalidate the credentials, invalidate that user token. So the next time they make a request, it will pull from the database again, and now they've got the refresh permissions. Great. So what I'm trying to do is validate this piece. I'm trying to build out this piece enough to, thank you for the following, the follows I cannot welcome in. I'm trying to build out this piece enough to understand the feasibility, understand that if I apply the token, it can be understood over here, and I can use, and then I can start using the application the exact same way. And then from there, that will give me the planning items necessary, and we'll go through and add the planning items and all the requirements and tasks necessary, and plot this story out as this as an actual set of work to be done. But I've got to do enough of the work to be usable. I best leave that in there for now. Kind of is part of this, I suppose. I suppose as my diagram starts to change over time, I kind of have a dotted line around this, right? Because, you know, this will, it will never publish to Kafka, right? It will never, uh, yeah, it will never publish to Kafka. Okay. So that's the goal to do that. Now, I do have some of this in place already. I'm not starting completely from what do I do next. Right this second, we have this authorization transform provider. And this is a component of YARP. So I'm using YARP as the API gateway here. This is a component of YARP. And there's examples of this out there. So it's not something that I've just dreamt up and it's not completely feasible. This is realistic. And what I do here is I add this authorization transform provider into the proxy. And what I do is I add a request transform. So this class is applied. I get dependency injection in here. And if it's an authenticated user, then I go and get the user and tenant from that auth, because this is an auth0 token, right? I go and get the permissions from my permissions provider and union it with my user and tenant so that that information still pass forward. Then build the token. So this build is literally just writing a new token. I did this so I can actually validate it at each step, but I can change that now back to a return. We don't need an extra variable for no reason. This builds a security token, puts the issuer and the audience on it, adds a claim, sets an allows us to set expiration. We'll figure that out later, and then adds the signing credentials so we can validate that signature on the other side. So the gateway would inject this signature, we'd validate it on the other side to make sure that we actually are receiving a token from us. Is the goal. JWT configuration there is loaded from our builder, and yeah, so that's the intent. Whether it's realistic or not, I don't know. Let's have a look. So let's start up. So if you are new to the stream, if you have any questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, if there's something specific interesting you and you want to see more of it, let me know. I'm happy to talk about this. The stream does not have to be 100% productive all the time. It can be about conversation and learning, and that goes both ways. Right? I'm just as open to learning as anything else. Let's start this up. So I was actually changing planning initially, hoping that it would be quite a smooth change. And then I realized that because of the way the application starts, view is the only one that actually is going to be able to validate my initial requests. It has to validate that I'm authorized. I was having some issues there, but we'll dig into this. I was starting to put breakpoints around some of these pieces, so. Uh-oh. Kafka's, yeah. Yeah, I did that. Dot slash services down Kafka. So these are a set of scripts that I've written to call these Docker Compose files over a bunch of the services that are necessary for Liquid Sky to be up and running. There is quite a lot of different technology in place. Let's start that again. Start once more. No, failed to get configuration from console. Okay. Why is console now broken? Oh, that'll do it. Very. So the Kafka topics, etc., all have the configuration in one place. So as I publish an event or I consume an event in the system, it uses its type to determine which topic it's going to subscribe from or push to. Um, Normally that's retained, so a restart somewhere has caused that to not recover by the looks of it, which is fine. Come on. Technically, everything isn't required here. What I do, I could have actually just started the read-only version for what I'm testing. So when I do this again, I'll start the read-only version. It would just be nice to validate. But only the view is changing, therefore that's the one that's going to get the initial test. So we go over here and let's do localhost 4200, which should make an authenticated request. Yep, there we go. Okay, so our configuration has, oh, audience and issuer. Issuer's null. That'll be a challenge. Let's put that in read-only view. Why is issuer audience authority? Okay, we need to align what we're referring to as. I'm fighting the urge to put them on the meta quest right now. Okay. No, not messaging. Share kernel. Extensions. No, it's not part of shared kernel extensions. It's part of shared identity extensions. Auth0. There you go. Service collection. Add internal auth. Authority and audience. Why do I not? Why am I thinking I need an issuer there then? So that would be why. Why am I using? So I need. Is that my authority? If this value is not a null, an issuer claim will be added, overriding an ish claim. Audience. Wherever I've either I've either swapped them over. Yeah, they are different. Issuer and audience. No, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking authority. Is the authority the issuer? Is that where I'm going wrong there? I think that's the way it is. So issuer is authority. Right. Let's do that. Now let's run it in read-only mode. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, right? Again, it's kind of crazy because throughout a career, I have managed to avoid dealing with identity at any great level. I've always been able to implement simple auth, which means that I've dodged on some of this stuff to the point where I really don't have the knowledge that I would prefer I had. So, well, Liquid's got VR capabilities. I'd like to move post-it notes around the whiteboard. That can be a side quest. Absolutely. let's get the features in there though first. Okay, so let's see. Does our configuration now have? Yeah, it has authority and audience. I believe this might actually be the problem I was facing. Oh, 500s. Let's remove that so we don't keep hitting that. Let's hit this. 500 GraphQL. The current user is not authorized to access this resource. So the problem there is I need to go on the other side, but I don't know where to put the intercept on the other side at this point. From an education perspective, this is quite eye-opening. So we know the token's being added, um, or we hope the token's being added by the transform, right? So the transform is saying, again, on this request, what we're going to do is, if it's an authenticated request, we're going to gather the information and actually set the authorization to a different bearer token. If it's not, then it doesn't really matter. So whatever's there is there, right? So the proxy request, we're going to set the authorization header on the proxied request. This example comes from please tell me I didn't. Oh, I closed it. No, I didn't. I didn't close it. This example comes from this bright white screen. But yeah. So I'm not dealing with the routes and clusters at this point. I'm pulling the routes through, but yeah. Authority token. So maybe I'm doing the same thing on the other side incorrectly. So now if we go to the view, we have the authority audience and secret. When we load that up, I've add internal auth, authority audience, and secret. I need to. There's a way of doing this. You can actually add a method in there. Debug token being sent to auth C# ASP like that. How to debug an authorize attribute. I want to debug the source of the app. Not what I asked. We can add a method that kind of intercepts the request. Yeah, here we go. Bearer events. So we can do options events equals new bearer events on message received. Console right line message. Oh, well, debugger.break right a second is what we care about. Is that no? Is that what are you complaining about there? Oh, what are you expecting? Oh, return. Asynchronous. Okay, let's run that again. So what I want to do is I want to see that token, pull the token. So if the token's here, then it's a configuration issue. Um, pull the token out and um, validate it in um, okay, message context, HTTP context, request, headers. I don't see an auth header there, do you? Request headers authorization. I do not see an authorization header. Request headers. There is no authorization header. So that'll be why. So is that... And again, it might seem like I'm doing all the work here to do this, but I want to validate the principles. I want to validate the ideas and make sure that it's actually feasible to do it this way. So that's why the gateway has a, you know, a permissions provider. Ultimately, that's going to be the interaction with this database. So the actual functionality here, the ability to have this configured, all these pieces are separate. So there's we need a UI in Liquid Sky to be able to do that. We need the default permissions to be set when you create an administrator. There's all sorts of knock-on effects that this is going to have. So I'm not doing the work. I'm validating this component. So my bet here is that this is not. See, there's only proxy request. So why is that? Context dot proxy request headers authorization, right? So adding policies, adding permissions, etc. on the other side is not really what I need to worry about. I need to worry about making sure this token's added in, and it's not doing that, is it? So we put a breakpoint there, run that. Add the token to the outgoing proxy request headers. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. You received that one first. Now it receives that one. Yeah, that's not. That has authorization. Okay. Again, because of the weird place these there's actually a tool within here that if that was actually separate, I would actually be able to read the jot. Um, So you create ticket, read ticket, update ticket, list tickets. Now, my guess is that permissions is not quite what I expect it to be. And I think that is a string, it's not an array. There's my user ID, my tenant. Those are going to change anyway. Um, Morning, Mr. Jones. How you doing? Um, okay, so again, we're getting here. That's the WebSocket though. That's a whole different challenge. The WebSocket. I need to pull that piece out as part of this. Options. Okay, now this is a request. So if we look at this one, I think yeah, this does. So that's going to build the correct the correct value. Okay. Now we should get to message and we should have auth. User is not authorized to access history, so let's validate. Let's validate that I actually added the right permissions. That's another check I should probably make as well. So the problem is these are GraphQL requests, and GraphQL does not have anything other than authorize, right? So all I'm doing is using authorize there. So the the permissions don't actually play into this. Like I'm allowed to do it. That's all I care about right this second. The specialization of authorization is not really what I need to panic about right this second. That's why I'm doing this now, is so that we can proceed with this design. Because there's a lot of pieces that need to change. Uh, let's do. So is this a? So we add internal auth, add authorization. The amusing thing is adding authentication and adding authorization. Authorization comes from that bearer token in authentication, right? So is it that my user is not configured correctly? How would I do that? I know how to do this. I bring up this and body copy value. No, I need that to close. Okay. So that is a current one. So this has to be sub. So user is sub. So I think we're building the token incorrectly. Right? So that's claim types. So what does that go under? That's sub. And I actually don't want to do that. I want to do. Oh, I need to. I don't want get you because get user identifier actually translates it as this. It takes out it splits it. I want that, don't I? identity.name. So I want that. Tenant is still valid because tenant is one of mine. So that's sub. This should be added automatically anyway. Audience, those should be as are. Role doesn't really matter at this point. Permissions is an array. Permissions is an array. Oh, hold on. Let's put this back. We do need the user identifier still, but let's do this needs to be that identity.name. We're just going to make a bunch of assumptions right this second to make this work. Tenants should still be there. Sub should still be there. But our permissions. Get permissions. We don't want that to be a string. That's the problem. How do we make that? Value type. How do we make that? So it's clearly an array in here. Pass array to claim. As an array. Oh no. Tell me that's not how I do it. So they're serializing that object as a JSON array. JSON serializer dot serialize permissions. Let's go with that. Let's see what happens. You sound like a Churchill dog. Oh yes. Oh no. Oh no, 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 no. I still think that's incorrect, but we'll worry about that later. We just need to make it match enough, don't we? Let's put, where did I have the breakpoint in place over here? Internal auth. Yeah, debugger to break. Okay, there's a debugger there. There you go. Okay. So what does that auth look like now? Request, headers, WebSocket. rest. Headers, auth. There we go. On two trackball mice on my desk. No more double clicks. For now. Let's open up a new session of Jut.io. So I don't have to, I can do a comparison still. Okay. Completely wrong. But our sub is correct. Ultimately we'll remove the auth 0 piece, so we won't even need the auth 0 piece on the Liquid Sky side at all. Let's see if that changes that in any way, shape, or form. I don't think it will. I think it's an error still. Yeah, the current user is not authorized to access history ethos. So success here is a successful token production. That I don't think has much bearing. It's more this. Maybe scope. We've got expiration. We've got issuer. We've got audience. It doesn't really matter about that audience being an array. So we've got sub, we've got issuer, we've got audience, we've got expiration. Scope, I don't think matters much. Interesting that this can support permissions array, but this can't. The .NET version doesn't. I think JSON claim value types. Not really. I mean, doing this perfectly is not really necessary right this second, but missions dot hold on. Select. Gonna go that way. What else would have been missing there? Sub tenant. We got the bearer token in there. I don't see what we did. I mean, other than scope, I don't think this doesn't have any bearing, right? This is not part of the auth right now. So I think the reality is it's a authorized party. Is that the signature? Expiration time, issued at. I mean, issued at and whatnot doesn't really make a difference, right? That field. Signing credentials. Again. What else can you do in there? Not before expires, audience claims. Yeah, not before. Nothing else there. Um, headers. Yeah, there's nothing else on that side of things. Okay, let's just give it one more try. So yeah, if you're joining the stream for the first time, obviously, I'm right now playing with auth tokens, offloading the well, not offloading. I'm basically using auth zero token to get me to the gateway, and then changing the creating a new token to send to the server uh, on behalf of the user. So auth zero is only really used to the gateway to validate that I'm actually a user in the system. First one, headers, authorization, view, copy. That'll help you. Still errored. Let's clear that just to make sure. Let's run that. Run that. Yeah, still errored. The current user is not authorized to access this resource. Now that's my auth zero token, not the token that is actually sent to the application. Um, However, that token does look like that. So we have our auth zero sub. So even it to get the user ID, all the code that's relevant for getting the user ID is still valid there. The sub, those pieces. So on this particular request, tasks, I'm trying to get the tasks right. I'm going to get the tenant identifier. Uh, this behavior is still valid, right? So if I put a breakpoint here, I'm just not getting here because this authorized attribute is not allowing me through. I'm not specifying any policies or roles. The only requirement here is that I actually am a user, which should be established. So what am I missing to, because all I've done differently here. So I've replaced this call with this call. That's it. Um, it's almost identical. This one just sets up the token. This one, obviously, I'm putting the validate. Maybe this is the problem. Maybe because I've put a signing certificate on it. I've put a signature on it, but it shouldn't matter. Let's let's not make that assumption. JWT audience. So my audience and authority are set, and the gateway audience. It's the same things. Authority and audience, right? They're the same values. The secret is again what's being used there to build that validation. It shouldn't matter. What else? What else? What else? What else? What else? Um, header, payload. Yeah, see, has audience claims, keys, values, but that's what that is exactly. So I don't want to reset the payload there. Um, So issuer, audience, actor, issued at gets the value of the issued at claim, convert it to a case. Oh, but you can't set it. There's no set for that. That's it. Payload. Right. There's no. That's the end of that. Payload equals. Yeah, that's there's no set on that. That's this. So interesting. Let's have a talk with AI. Um, Chat GPT. Put that over there. Wow. Could you be? I like DuckDuckGo in general. I like that it blocks a lot of stuff, but in the same, it's really not very good when it comes to um, windowing. What is required for a token to be attributes? For a token to be valid for the authorized attribute in ASP.NET, token format must be a bearer token. It should be sent in the authorization header. Yep. The token must have a valid signature. If it's a signed token, the signing key must match the key used by the authentication server. The issuer claiming the token must match the expected issuer token. The audience claiming the token must match. Expiration must not be expired. Claims validation, right? Valid issuing authority. So we have issuer claim, we have everything else. But maybe the signing is what I don't want to be doing right this second. Maybe that's the um let's assume that some of that's down to that, right? So again, let's assume that some of right. So I did this. Validate issue a signing key equals true. New symmetric security key, get bytes, your secret. Yeah, that's fine. Validate audience. Yeah. Validate. Yeah, I don't want to do that. Let's just try. Honestly, Claude has not been Code has been more vague than not in a lot of ways. That's why I'm still going back to ChatGPT. Let me um yeah, it's the same. And I'm not showing it on screen, but right now it's the same essential information. So I've asked the first question, and then let's ask the second question and see if there's any difference. Um, and due to unexpected capacity. Yeah. Okay. So let's give that a go. Yeah, I'm not. I'm still against making it a constant part of my workflow to jump to AI on every single thing that gets .com. It's just it's not that I worry about it feeling like cheating. It just feels unproductive to keep asking AI because then I spend more time trying to figure out the question. Okay, so that's the identical thing. With the exact same result. Okay. It's a valid token. That's correct. So this secret here is that secret there, right? So I'm validating it correctly. Um, there's a security key. That's the way that GPT shows for symmetric keys. That's how I'm building it here. Signing credentials. Need to know because I don't know the what tells me the encoding type. But we didn't do this before, so hold on. We tried this without, so and it still doesn't work. Hold on. Signing credentials. Like, okay, well, let's do it this way. So Auth0 does have yeah. Auth0 does have the way to verify the signature the same way. And that's all I really care about. But and again, I'm trying to invalid signature. See, there we go. That could be why. So um oh god, that's a lot more. Public asymmetric key, manual validation using the middleware. Right, but that's assuming that it's matching. Yeah. Validate token. So does it assume HMAC then? Is that what that's looking like? Okay, hold on. How do I set signing credentials on a JWT? Hi Chandu, and Ramla Geek. Hello. How you doing? What version? This is Angular 18, I believe. I have not updated to 19 yet. RSA security key. Wow, they go so using asymmetric, using symmetric key HMAC get bytes. So key there is get bytes there. HMAC SHA-256. What am I missing there? Oh. Sorry, I had to read that back a few times to understand what you're talking about. Yeah. Um, yeah, this is Angular 18. Um, signing credentials, signing credentials. Yeah. So this is a symmetric security key, um, symmetric and asymmetric keys. Strong key at least 256 bits for symmetric. Door key securely. Yeah, we don't. The storage of the key does not matter right now. Reactive program do you use RxJS? Not a lot. I'm still trying to get my head around some of the abilities. I am using signals in the signal stores in here, so I am getting a lot of changes happening in response to things happening. I'm still trying to get my head around how to write effective Angular in this world of so you know um best showing the actual one. Signal R, not Signal R. I'm using signals NGRX signal stores in here. So when I change a value over here, I can see a change over here, um, and whatnot. But writing idiomatic Angular is not something I'm good at yet. Yep. I'm building an actual application. So this is an application for planning and work and work tracking. So this is actual stuff to be done. Yeah, you've been here before. So this is Tailwind with PrimeNG and yeah, Angular 18. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So they are saying that basically, well, so that is the correct thing to do. However, I want to just go back to that ASCII. Um, Symmetric security key, body issuer signing. Yeah, that should be good enough. Yeah. Oh, it is so cold today. Have a look. Let's make sure that UTF-8. I would assume UTF-8 versus ASCII in a key is going to make a bit of a difference. But that being said, without the validation, it's still not accepting it. So I will keep my fingers crossed. But yeah, it's that one. So I suppose the test is if we can get the header out of here. Oh, no auth. Awesome. Oh, because it's the multiples. We can get the header, if we can get it out and take that. Yeah, verified. Okay, so it is. Let's just do that. So my genuine hope is that by the end of this stream, I can start to add some of the items necessary to document out what comes next. So there's not just it's not actually not just building out this piece. It's the knock-on effects this has is building on security component so that we can actually configure permissions, figuring out the pieces that need to be done here, figuring out this. So there's actually right now there's a WebSocket communication with GraphQL, which I do want to remove from Vue. That should go back to communications, but ultimately there should be an authenticated WebSocket connection, which I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to make happen. Um, because it's not a default part, is to put an authenticated WebSocket connection in there, and therefore you can have a secured per user channel open there. This is a YARP. It's a microservice. Yeah, so I'm using YARP as a gateway. There's no cloud stuff involved at this point. You do not want to let me do this, do you? The current user is not authorized to access this resource. So how would I do this? So when you deploy, how does gateway help when it sits on the same VM or container? So the client only ever communicates through the gateway. Um, so this is the deployed version. So the so in Kubernetes, the client is a thing. The routing through, because I have a tunnel, a Cloudflare tunnel, and any request that goes to API or GraphQL is routed to the gateway instance, and that gateway instance is the one that communicates with the backend services. The client never communicates with these individual services itself. It just communicates over one address and gets routed. So it's its own container right this second in the deployed version. Right this second, it's a service that is running independently. And then the client is routing all its requests through here. So the client is configured to go to environments, development. It goes to 7285, which is the address of the gateway. And then all these are just routed to by configuration in here. So yeah, which means that to the client, there's only ever one address. It only ever goes to one address, and then all these different services. Radio Patrick, Happy New Year. It's going well. How about yourself? Just getting up. Yeah, I suppose you're several hours behind now, aren't you? So, okay. I think I'm close. I think so with the token. Oh, to be young again. Don't remind me. Well, Patrick's also in Utah, I believe now. So Steve, there's a small window in the morning because you start at 5. Yeah, yeah. Um, well, the only way I could go longer would be if I got a new job or managed to get a job where they would be okay with me streaming. Yeah. So sadly, I don't have much more of a window in which to stream. I mean, nuts. I'm missing something very, very easy, and I don't know why. I don't know what. I don't know how. Includes policy. See, there's no. The policies don't really make a difference right a second. Um, because they're not being picked up. I've not specified anything. So even if I go here, right, I'm just authorizing. So this request is never getting hit. That's what I was fired in before. It's not like this is a. It's not like this is throwing an error. It's this authorize attribute is um removing that. So it's deeming it not valid. Because but authorization is the component. This is authentication and primarily authorization. Authority and audience. I just got an email for a job interview doing backend server work at a game studio, and it's remote. Ah. Yeah. I think there is quite a lot of jobs out there, but the skill sets they require or the pay they're offering. There's a lot of I get a lot of emails for jobs in Pennsylvania. It's just not they're all um on-site jobs. Yeah, some companies aren't the quickest. What do we need to do here? I think removing that now is we don't need to be keep hitting that debugger. We need to understand why we're getting the current user is not authorized to access this resource. Okay, so um, let's go to graph chili cream, hot chocolate. First of all, hello, how you doing? Welcome back. Um, so again, I don't see. I mean, scope maybe authorized party, the party to which this token was issued. Oh, sorry to hear that. Hey, Yukiduki. No, it removed. Yes. 1 hour before your algorithms exam. Oh, fun. Happy New Year. uh, I have a very bad approach to exams in that I go into them with if I don't know it by now, I'm never going to know it approach. So yeah. Okay, so we do have, but these things do not matter right now, but the permissions are being built out the same way. So we know that permissions are there. No, no, I'm good, thanks. 'll have to do a bit more learning. Hmm. So RS-256, Jut Kid, H-256. HS-256, type Jut. What's key ID? Right. So okay, so there's a difference in the algorithm, which is fine. HMark, RSA, RSA SHA-256. I'm going to use an HMark. It's like a document. You know, the section base is easy to use and easy to deauth in case of hijack, but you keep going back to Jut like a drag. Uh, Again, this is an area of my skill set that is definitely at its weakest, because I've never had to actually deal with this stuff, so I've never had to go up and learn great deals of this in one go. Um, what I'm trying to do here, for reference for those that are just joining, I am trying to build the token at the gateway level so that I can set my permissions based upon my tenant at the gateway level. And then the token, or again, whatever I pass forward is authorized against the gateway, not against my auth0 token. Um, this is my first comp sci semester, so I'm not great programming yet, but I'm trying. That's all you can do. Just keep on trying, keep on learning, keep on growing. Um, Jots at work, but for no good reason. It's auth and security in general is not is something that I think that being a specialist in is the only good way of doing it effectively. I think the the most of us get by, and I think that's actually we land on secure purely by um, um, sorry. Oh no, you're not actually going to show me a site. Oh, there you go. Head to beta. What? Oh, JWT V2. Oh, they've done dark mode. That's nice of them. Whenever a user connects, we still load authorization data from the DB, so why not authenticate check as well? And the JWT is repulsingly big, and that is passing each request. So what I'm going to do here is at this level, when the request will always come from an auth0 validated token, right? It will always come from that. When I get here, I will offload that and put security in here to add to create a new token that has permissions and is validated here. So I could run that risk, the same risk you have, right? Where I bloat that um, um, unnecessarily. Um, but the basic idea is that per tenant, those permissions are applied, and this is the only way I can think of that I can apply that because my auth method is disconnected from the entire platform, right? And my authentication method. So I think it's valid because again, I'm just going to put a bunch of permissions in there, and each API is going to have its own context of what's necessary. Whenever a user connects, we'll still load authorization data from the DB, so why not authenticate check as well? And the JWT is repulsively big, and that is passed on each request. Yeah. So because of the way the system's broken up, these do not know about users, so auth check there is not valid. So this is where the permissions are going to apply. We'd have a security API that allows us to configure and set permissions per user in that tenant. And then this aspect of security will be attached to gateway, which would then, as a user makes a request, also caching. Um, yeah, it should work, and I think it's valid. I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with this approach. I just got to figure out why the heck I can't get the JWT to be valid. Um, let's try and make it the same way as. So the only difference there is, let's remove that for a second. How do they do? How do you validate the RSA key? The reality is though that that shouldn't actually matter at all at this point. Um, it's still a signature applied on the auth0 version. It's just not. I don't validate it. Or just say signature verified. I don't know why. Um, Interesting that they've made um, this now a tool inside of. Hmm, invalid signature, and then we go over here, take the secret. Ah, interesting. UTF-8. Ah. So, I'm just checking, especially for this purpose. For this purpose, I could do as long as I get a valid token. It doesn't really matter. I can dig into this later. I'm just trying to. This is bugging me to do this the way I'm doing it, and then. So we're applying permissions. We're getting the right claims. We are passing those claims through. That's fine. I don't believe there's any problem with this piece. Then when we build the actual thing, we build a token, we set the authority in the audience based upon our configuration. I'm not switching. I'm not doing something dumb like switching them, am I? Authority. It doesn't really matter what these are. Authority and audience. They're just strings at the end of the day. I'm not flipping them in any way, shape, or form. I'm not doing anything weird with them. Binding that configuration. Yeah. Transformed, we inject that. I would suggest not putting permissions into JWT. What would you suggest? Hi, Ian. How you doing? Where would you suggest permissions go? Where? The token would be invalidated and reloaded from. So the reason I'm doing this is we have tenant-based systems. Each one of those APIs has no knowledge of users or permissions or what's allowed what, right? I can set what permissions are required to do an action. But I need per tenant authorization. So the idea is the auth0 token comes through into the gateway. At that point, we are valid. We are allowed to use the application because that's a valid token. This is authorized. This request is authorized. We then load the permissions and create a new token in which we load the permissions, and that token is the one that's sent to the backend pieces. The auth0 token is not forwarded to the actual application, which means the rest of the application is only dealing with an internal job, not the auth0 one. When we change the security, when we change the permissions for a tenant, it will publish to Kafka. It will then publish and then consume in the security component that's in API gateway and invalidate the cache and then allow you to reload the next request through for that user. So the job that's built and provided is built based upon that user for that tenant. So if I log into a different tenant, I get a different set of roles. So putting permissions anywhere but here is a lot of repetition, because then I would need to clone user permissions to every single database. And then I can't make it as part of the authorization attribute. I'd have to make it as I have to make a custom authorization, which would then say yes or no. Whereas if I set up permissions, I can set up uh, policies on each API for dealing with those permissions. So it's because of multi-tenancy that this is a particularly hard problem, and also distributed, right? This way, the individual systems only need to care about whether what permission they require to do their job. So if it's I getting a list of tasks, I should be able to have list task permission, no matter what role I'm in. Doesn't matter as long as I've got the list task permission. Roles are a concept at the application level that group up a bundle of permissions, right? So yeah, that's why permissions are going into this level and go into the JOT, but it's not the public facing JOT. The actual permissions I'm going to use for the client are going to be the same permissions, but there'll be GraphQL will deal with them for me, so I can get my profile separately. They won't be in a JOT. They'll be downloaded to the user as a profile. That being said, how do I? So it doesn't really matter what I do here, because even if I make this either load your existing key or create a new one. Chart if 6 doesn't really make a big difference. Asymmetric and symmetric doesn't really make a big difference here. Zons U1, you do not have link permissions, so if you want to PM me the link, you can do. That is a way. Good morning, good day. Hope you're well. So, you know, this is figuring out the stories required to implement this as a larger part of the system. Once this is in place, permissions and things can be refined and set. Oh, today, which project is today? This is Liquid Sky. I'm going to say Monday and Friday as developers.stream temporarily, and Tuesday through Thursday do Liquid Sky development. Um, oh, that's a rough timeline right this second. Um, developers are streaming something I do want to focus a little energy on, because I do want to get that up and running. But Liquid Sky is also a priority over everything else. What am I looking up here? I'm looking up uh, so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to establish the pieces necessary for the communication here, so I can actually start planning out the stories, or the planning of building this out as a larger component of the system, and we'll focus on that over the next week or two to get those pieces in place. So very much solely back on the development aspect of Liquid Sky. Once permissions are in, once that structure's in place, it'll be much easier to add roles and test roles and stuff, and then start to build out that as we build extra stories into the system. Understanding who's in what role where will aid in that. So scope. Why do I not have scope? So nothing says that this token should be invalid as an auth token unless the HMAC SHA-256 key is invalid. But it's funny, that's a signature verified. And this one with that same thing doesn't say valid, verified, does it? If I do paste that, that signature is invalid. But you can still decode that. That's not. So what am I missing? Because if I do 500, current user is not authorized to access this resource. It's definitely passing the token as the bearer token in the proxy request. The yeah, it's gonna be 500. Building a church management system. I have against all good advice feature loaded it. Now I'm trying to finish it. It's just been a ton of work. Yeah, because I think it's coming back from GraphQL. There's a GraphQL post, so it's not returning 403. I think the payload coming back through GraphQL, auth not authorized. So I think it's a chili cream, not validate. It's a chili cream authorization role. So it's something to do with that piece. Let's have a look. Authentication. Issue a signing key. Get bytes. Symmetric security. Yeah. Use authentication. Use authorization. Yeah. Accessing the cleanse principle. So yeah, that's pretty much what I'm doing. So if we look over here on this program, add authorization on Telegram. I am switching out using auth0 for my own created generated token so that I can inject permissions at the gateway level for multi-tenancy. And I'm getting Chili Cream is not Chili Cream's authorize attribute is not functioning with my changes. Validate lifetime, validate audience. Audience and authority, that's fine. So Chili Cream is thrown back, auth not authorized. It's Googled. I thought I'd be doing primary.NET dev on a Mac. That's where it's gotten to. Yeah, it's been feasible for years. I mean, I've done .NET development on a Mac. It's especially with Rider. With Rider, it just feels like I'm doing it on just a different machine. And in terms of this, rolling my own authorized request is not going to be what I need to do because I need to use Chili Cream's GraphQL library. It sounds like they're not getting the token, right? So is that the same? Transform error for auth. I'm gonna validate. Um, um, that's why we have so many new terminals, programming languages, etc. that come out solving unique problems better. Yeah, Hot Chocolate. Well, no, Hot Chocolate is a GraphQL platform. So this is authenticating with my view, which is GraphQL, and Hot Chocolate is the library there that's doing that. So the attribute here is their attribute. This works with the auth0 one, right? It works fine with the auth0 one. So I'm just trying to validate why it won't work with my token. Like I'm adding the token in the exact same way, right? Um, that shouldn't matter. That shouldn't matter at all, but that's fine. We can try that just to make sure that that wasn't the case, because that'd be interesting. Um, they believe in miracles. Yeah. Well, it's returning a not authorized response, auth not authorized, saying the user is not permitted. Current user is not authorized to access this resource. So it's not doing something that's valid in the auth0 version, but not valid in my version, right? So validate audience, validate lifetime. Lifetime shouldn't matter. Um, it's got the lifetime. Um, let's just make sure. Let's make sure of something. I don't. Yeah. I'm gonna get ready for work here, so I'll catch you later. Stay safe with all snow you guys have been getting. Patrick, thank you very much. Have a great day. I'll see you again soon. Hot Chocolate says you should get 200 when not authorized. Well, regardless, it's not validating the token. Doesn't matter whether I'm getting 500 or 200. If 500, if it's trying to validate and it's failing, it's one thing. But you know, um, if we do not specify any arguments to authorize directive, it will only enforce that request is authenticated, nothing more. If he's not tries to access an authorized field of GraphQL, right? So I'm not actually adding permissions at this point. Ultimately, permissions are going to be a pass of this as well. Where if you're not allowed list whatever, you don't see the list, right? So I get that I'm technically not doing authorization, but I'm also now not doing authentication. So it's not treating that token as an authentication. So why does it not accept the token is the question. So I'm missing something in my configuration. Either there's something in the token that's not set up correctly. Do I need to move it over to RSA? Set up a PEM and do that fun stuff. Um, Okay. So authority and audience, yeah, that is pulling the right things from there. My idea was to put the signature verification on there because obviously it's going to verify an internal signature, which means that if someone was to get through to this API without that signature, they could build the jar all they wanted to. It's not they're not going to get the signature. Um, but even without that, so it's not even validating that piece because the default is to not validate the signature. It's not even applying the token because the token should still be. It's still a valid token, right? It still has the information, which is the bare minimum. So it has the issuer, the audience, the expiration, and the sub for the user identity. That's all it really requires. And this is the auth 01. So roles don't matter. The issuer, maybe? Have I got an issuer? I got issuer, yeah. Issuer's in there. Authorized party. Scope, maybe, but scope is getting replaced by permissions anyway in the map. Like I said, this was working fine with auth 0, so I'm doing something weird. But Craftsman, good morning. Hope you're well. Yeah. Troubleshooting JWT issues. Yeah. Feel like it's first program class all over again. Brain goes out the window. Absolutely. It is not easy. Okay. That being said, I need to things. Okay. Frustrating. Um Ultimately, I need this token again to so I'm going to offload the auth 0 token, switch over to using my token. So the entire backend is using a token of my doing, right? It's not doing any third party token. That does allow us to switch out for something else to authorize, authenticate eventually, if need be. But it does mean that we can, once that's in place, we can support per tenant permissions, which is the important aspect here. So, there's a whole ton of features that are going to come from this over the next week or two. Being able to create the security, there's going to be a security component which is going to allow configuration of permissions, capturing of user permissions. I think for right now that'll be a defined list of strings essentially that will be stored in the database and then able to be toggled per user. That way we can show them, group them, do all those sorts of fun things. How they'll be added, that's for later, but ultimately producing that out so that the view can see that and display those permissions as a list of things to toggle. And then storing per user permissions in there and producing those events. So there'll be a security component of the system that will store user permissions when they change, when they toggle, when we can use roles, etc., to toggle groups of them. But that will publish events to Kafka. The security component over here attached to the gateway, the receivers here will pick up that store that into a database for the gateway to work with. There'll be security provider interface for the gateway to pull from, and that will have a cache. So Redis will live over here or something like that, so that we can keep those requests nice and fast and not actually constantly querying a database. A change to this would invalidate that. So there's a lot of different pieces, a lot of different stories necessary. There's a lot of technical pieces, which is actually question in production. What kind of configs would you run for your database, RAM, CPU? Very much depend on what size database I'm dealing with. So in the past, I've dealt with a couple of 100 gigs databases. Obviously, with SQL Server, the way it is, you want to provide, because SQL Server, if it's SQL Server, will eat up as much memory as you give it. So the machines we've had have typically had, 128, 256 gig of memory available to them, and it will chew it up. CPU wise, it very much depends on the usage case. In these cases, these would be very small. These don't need to be massive instances, because they're independent databases. They could be independent database servers. They could be different storage technology. So I would go pretty small on these ones in terms of, because they don't need a lot of active query stuff. My last startup ran into database issues when a lot of load hit. Yeah, because you would probably constrained with how it's pulling data out. So in these only need to be, these don't need to have high memory because they're not querying a lot. They're basically inserts and then with a few queries, and then it's okay if they fall out of what's the word? There's like a period where it will actually store the data in memory for speed. These don't matter as much. So these databases don't matter. This database matters more. So this database I would probably give more memory, and it's not just caching. There's actually something in SQL, right? That has, there's a term for it in SQL. It is caching essentially, but it's basically where it's actually giving the availability to you for the data. So these don't need to have a high retention on that. If these get forgot, they get forgot because it's basically inserts into and then queries straight out of. Yeah. This database is probably the most heavily of the system as it stands right now. This one would be the one with the heaviest requirements. I would put a lot more RAM on that one, and probably CPU usage, because again, it's calculating views. It's doing a lot more to prepare the data for display. Yes, yeah, yeah. The name. There's a separate name. It is essentially caching, but it's like a temporary store where it goes to make sure that data access of that, and that's what it stores in RAM mainly. So that thrashing isn't going to matter as much on these because they're going to get updated a lot, but they're not going to need to recover a lot of data. They're not going to do massive queries. There's no complicated indexes needed to be built in these because these aren't used for query. This one, however, is. So I'd probably load this up pretty heavily in terms of RAM and CPU, because it would be necessary for the speed. Changes mid. Changes right now is a MongoDB for that reason, in that it doesn't need to be. I don't think it's buffer cache, but I think the similar thing. Yeah, it's basically a set of data that is constantly loaded, and that's why SQL Server, when you start a SQL Server up, if you don't set the memory limit, it will just chomp through everything it can, because it just allocates all the memory to the size of your database. And obviously, if your database is 200, 300 gig, and you have 120 gig of memory, well, it's going through all that as much as it can, because it's going to give itself the biggest possible window. So, yeah. So for this would be a bigger instance of a database necessary. The rest would be relatively okay with a little bit of, because again, the purpose of the system is Well, we'll see. We'll see what it gets to. Once we get through the test phases and see what it looks like, then my initial plan would be to run this on Kubernetes, and potentially put this into a hosting center on a cheaper box. Um, I have a friend who is very good at setting that sort of stuff up. So potentially buy a couple of boxes and put them in a hosting center for, a couple of $1,000s a year and host it that way. And then before assessing the cloud version, tries to prefetch any data in it thinks you'll need, then you tune the system. It keeps track of what it queried the most and tries to populate into memory. Yes, yeah. So it is a cache, but an intelligent cache, I suppose. So yeah, I think Chris Jones, you're probably right. Buffer cache. There's actually a term I can't remember, but so that's how I go at that. I would attack it from that perspective, in that this would be the heaviest used, and a reporting database or a search database, each one. Yeah. Okay. So we are going to start our first raid of the year to Fullbots, because I have to go. I have to go get ready for work. Sadly, I didn't get this. Dismiss. Um, Sadly, I didn't get this into a good place right this second. But I think I'm close. I think I just got to figure out why why hot chocolate won't auth that token properly. But I think the idea is valid. So what I'll start doing is I'll start building out some of these active planning items, like how I want it to work. There's obviously UI involved. There's changing over these won't matter very much, because it's just switching out auth 0 for the internal auth, which is a very easy thing to do. And then being able to put the permissions and stuff in place, testing those things, scripting out those permissions, etc. Um, okay, so let's go raid full boss. Again, if you're interested in talking about this more offline, if you want to discuss things, if you want to ask further questions about the platform, about the design, about any of the technologies involved, there is a Discord. You're more than welcome to join the Discord and have a chat. We do hang out in voice sometimes if you're interested in talking more about it in one-to-one. I'm happy to go through this. I just don't share the code. So, that said, time for me to go. Let's raid Fullbots. I will be back tomorrow where we'll pick this up. Hopefully, I'll have made more progress. We'll see how much I can make today before um, uh, this evening, and yeah, then we'll hopefully by the end of the week be actually making some forward progress on building out the components, because a lot of this code is reusable, right? It's just the implementation of the provider, etc. So take care. Thank you very much for joining me. Don't forget, Fullbots is a game developer. There's a bit more hectic in there, but he's building an awesome game that is should be launching on Steam very soon, I would imagine. It is a great puzzle game if you like those sorts of things. So worth checking out and saying hi. And I will be back tomorrow. Take care, all. Have a great day.